I finished my Shaper Origin accessories box, I had people reaching out and saying, as an amateur hobbyist woodworker, is it worth getting a Shaper Origin? This is not sponsored, it's just my honest review of the Shaper Origin. And I'm going to talk about 3 things I really like about it and reasons you probably want to get it, and 3 reasons you might not want to get it. Spoiler alert, I really like it and I would buy it again for sure. Number 1, the thing I really like about it is that you can program right on the Shaper. You don't have to learn any kind of really tricky CAD software. You certainly can, but you can program really easily on the Shaper and get going, or you can use their Shaper Labs software and really build a whole bunch of cool stuff. You can get a lot of really cool plans. Their Shaper community is really nice, and people are willing to share their plans with you. They do have some premium purchase kind of plans, the ones that are really, really nice and maybe a little bit more intricate. Softwares that I have used are things like Illustrator, and then also the Shaper Labs build software that they put on their website. That's been super helpful. One thing I really like to do is download SVG files. You can find endless SVG files that other people have made on Etsy or on eBay, and you can download those files, and usually it's like $1 or $2. So the real world example where I did that is I made a Trailblazers sign out of walnut and MDF and spray painted it. It looks awesome. And then I was able to make that with the Shaper Origin really easily by transferring that SVG file right into Origin. All right, let's talk about number 2. The second thing I really like about this is how small and portable it is and how easily you can maneuver it around a small shop. So I don't really have the room for a full CNC, and I'm guessing a lot of people out there don't either. Those things are large. You know, I've seen people with those 4-foot by 8-foot CNC machines, and I would dream of having one of those. They sound awesome, but I don't have the space for it. So this thing works really well. Now, when I was shopping, I thought about something like the Glowforge, which is really cool. But looking into those, they were frankly really expensive. The Glowforge was more expensive than this, and I thought it had some limitations that this doesn't have. And this thing's really small form factor. I can tuck it away. It's out of sight. Number 3, let's talk precision. I can dial in exactly whatever cut I want, and this thing's gonna hit it every time. It's gonna hit the depth I want every time. And just knowing that helps you feel more confident in what you're building, especially when you're cutting into some really expensive wood. This piece of plywood for this project was $200 for a 4x8 sheet of white oak plywood. That's nuts, $200. So the precision on this really helps out when you are a hobbyist woodworker and you just need to make sure that you're doing it right and you're doing it well and you're being accurate with those cuts. All right, let's talk about reasons I would avoid getting a Shaper if I were you and you're a hobbyist and you're not sure if you want to dive into this investment. Number 1, if you are looking to batch out projects, this is not for you. So what I'm talking about here is if you're someone who really needs to have a tool do the work while you do other work, this thing isn't it, because you need to have your hands on this, you need to have your eyes on this, and you have to go through and work with the tool as you go through a project. So if you're looking to batch stuff out, something like a smaller CNC might be up your alley. For me, most of the time what I'm doing is making stuff for family and friends and some clients where I need to make a few cuts very precisely, and that's going to be the only time I ever make that project, and then I'll move on to something else. So for me, this makes a ton of sense because I'm only going to make this once and I want to do it right. All right, the number 2 reason I would say you might not want to get this thing is if you have a limited budget and your money would go better elsewhere. And so let's talk through a couple tools that I would get before this thing. Number 1, a really nice planer. I have a helical head lunchbox planer, and it's great. It works really well. I would much prefer to have a floor standing helical head 15-inch, 20-inch planer. But again, I don't have the space in my shop. And that thing is well worth the money. And I would buy that thing before I'd buy a Shaper just because you need to always flatten wood. You're not always using this. One of the things I might get before a Shaper is a Festool domino. You might want this for inlays and engraving, and if that's the case, this is better than the domino. But oftentimes you might see people using the Shaper for joinery. And this thing can do incredible joinery, don't get me wrong. But the domino's fast. It works really well, and I find myself with every project reaching for the domino at some point when I'm doing these larger builds. And so I think for the money, if you're kind of like leaning one way or the other, I would honestly probably go for a domino first. Now, if you have unlimited budget, you know, someone just tossed a whole bunch of money at you, go for it. Why not? It's amazing. All right, and then the last reason I would hesitate to get it is if you struggle with technology. If you are an amateur woodworker who just wants to be in the shop, use some awesome tools, you're great with, hand tools, and you get by with everything else, look, it might not be for you. The technology is a part of it. You can't ignore the technology. And if you don't want to dive in to learning that and getting better with it, again, it's not hard, but why would you buy something that you constantly have to learn technology for if you're not into technology? This isn't hard at all to use. It's very user-friendly. But that might be a reason to hesitate and maybe put that money somewhere else in your shop because you don't really like that technology aspect of it. If you have any thoughts on whether or not you should get a shaper or any questions for me, feel free to leave them in the comments below. I really appreciate if you subscribe. And if you want to see how this project's going, check out the next video, which will be coming up, and that will be my sliding cowboy build.